The armored warrior in Sekiro feels almost unstoppable. Blades bounce off him, posture barely matters, and the only way to defeat him is by forcing him off a cliff. But on the other hand, Senpou Temple location isn't a narrow bridge. It's filled with dozens of monks, some with explosives, others with brute weapons, and many with a natural resilience. So what actually happens if the armored warrior marches into the Senpou Temple, enraged and ready to wipe everyone out? I believe he wins the early fights, brutally, but loses the war. Not because he is weak, but because the situation is stacked against him in ways that raw strength can't overcome. If this were a series of one-on-one duels, the outcome would be almost boring. The armored warrior dominates. Most monks rely on staff, blades and basic melee attacks, none of which meaningfully damage him. His armor is functionally impenetrable under normal conditions, and his sheer strength lets him throw enemies around like they weighed nothing. In a controlled encounter, he is less like a boss and more like a walking environment hazard. And that is exactly the trap. Because Senpou Temple is not built around fair fights. It's chaotic, crowded and designed to overwhelm. The moment I imagine him soloing the temple, I always start shifting from duels to group combat. In small numbers, the monks are irrelevant. In large numbers, they become a system, and systems don't fight fair. There is a tendency to think if the armored warrior can beat damage, he can't lose. But that only holds true if damage is the only win condition, and it isn't. Picture this. Instead of engaging him head-on, multiple monks converge at once, not to kill but to immobilize. The armor that protects him also weights him down, and 3, 4, maybe 10 bodies clinging to him, and suddenly the weight becomes a liability. He doesn't need to be pierced, he just needs to be stopped. Once grounded, the fight changes completely. The monks don't need perfect precision. They can pry, wedge, exploit gaps, or simply hold him in place while others figure out a solution. Even if that solution is crude, like slipping a blade into a joint or removing armor piece by piece, it becomes possible. Constant attacks from all directions mean no recovery, no pacing, no rhythm. Armored warrior is forced into continuous action, and continuous action leads to exhaustion. Individually, the monks are weak. Collectively, they are a mechanism for breaking him down. Let's also keep in mind that the armored warrior is still human. He needs rest, he needs food, he needs time. The monks don't need to defeat him in a single encounter. They can disengage, they can retreat, regroup and come back. They can stretch the conflict across hours or even days. Imagine him cutting through waves of enemies over and over. At first, it's effortless. Then it becomes tiring. Then it becomes draining. And eventually every swing costs more energy than the last. Meanwhile, the monks don't need to match his intensity. They only need to survive it. They can keep distance, force him to chase, attack in bursts, withdraw when pressured. At this point, the question stops being can he kill him and becomes how long he can keep going. Because exhaustion doesn't care about armor. And once fatigue sets in, even a small mistake becomes fatal. The armored warrior's greatest weakness isn't hidden, it's demonstrated clearly in-game. He dies when he is forced off a cliff. And Senpou Temple is filled with verticality. Ledges, bridges, drops. Even if none are perfectly positioned as the original boss area where Sekiro fights him, principle still applies. He doesn't need to be defeated conventionally, he just needs to be displaced. Now combine this with numbers. A coordinated group doesn't need to overpower him, they just need to push him, bite him, or redirect his movement toward dangerous terrain. Even a stagger, even a momentary loss of balance could be enough. And unlike I had to during the fight, the monks don't need to execute this perfectly on the first try. They can attempt it repeatedly. Every engagement is another opportunity. Even if you assume they never succeed to push him off, the environment still works against him in subtler ways. Tight spaces restrict movement, open areas expose him to range attacks, elevated positions give monks positional advantage. The armored warrior is strongest in controlled, narrow encounters. The temple offers the opposite. There is one more layer that shifts this from difficult to nearly impossible. Some of the monks are not truly killable. The presence of centipede-infested monks introduces a problem the armored warrior cannot solve. Even if he defeats them physically, they don't stay down in the same way ordinary enemies do. That creates a loop. He fights, he wins, they return. Over time that becomes overwhelming, not because they are stronger, but because they are persistent. They don't need to win, they just need to keep coming back. The armored warrior has limits, they effectively don't. Even if the armored warrior clears the Senpou Temple once, that doesn't mean the fight is over. It just resets. So I believe no, the armored warrior can't solo the temple. He carves through it, he devastates it. He might even make it look easy for a while, but eventually the numbers, the environment and the passage of the time catch up. Not because he's weak, but maybe because he is alone. Thanks for watching, hit that like button and subscribe for more Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice guides and lore videos, and stay sharp out there, Shinobi.